Rebecca Lawson had always been a woman of few words. Even during her formative years in a small Midwestern town, she preferred the company of her thoughts to the noise of empty conversations. Her deep green eyes observed the world with a quietness that many mistook for shyness, when in fact, it was a form of wisdom. She had learned early on that listening was worth more than speaking. At 27, with her light brown hair always styled in an impeccable military bun, Rebecca was completing her third year as a soldier in the United States Army, serving as a communications specialist at Fort Benning, Georgia. Her enlistment surprised no one who truly knew her. Rebecca sought structure, discipline, and above all, purpose. The Army offered her, plus an escape from the small town where she grew up under the shadow of an absent father and a mother who worked 2 jobs. Military life suited her methodical temperament and reserved nature. She followed orders without question, kept her uniform impeccable, and dedicated herself to perfecting her skills. In shooting practice, her concentration was legendary. In morning runs, her endurance inspired even the most She didn't seek recognition, only the quiet satisfaction of knowing she was doing the best job possible. In the women's quarters, Rebecca maintained the same discretion. While other soldiers shared stories, family photos, or weekend plans, she limited herself to a polite smile, absorbing each word without offering much in return. Some considered her arrogant, others mysterious. Few bothered to truly get to know her. Among these exceptions was Daniela Rodriguez, a lieutenant of Puerto Rican origin whose expansive personality contrasted with Rebecca's reserved temperament. It was Daniela who first noticed Rebecca's talent for foreign languages and encouraged her to request additional training in Arabic and Dari, skills that would eventually make Rebecca a valuable asset for intelligence missions. "You have a gift, Lawson," Daniela would often say. "Your ability to observe and absorb, it's rare. The Army needs people like you." Rebecca accepted the compliments with a discreet nod, but internally felt a pang of pride. It was good to be valued for something beyond her ability to follow orders. Over time, her reputation as an exemplary, albeit extremely reserved, soldier spread throughout the base. Superiors trusted her with tasks that required precision and discretion. Her peers respected her efficiency, even if few could say they truly knew her. When the announcement of a possible deployment to Afghanistan arrived, Rebecca felt a mixture of apprehension and anticipation. It would be her first mission in a conflict zone, an opportunity to put her training to the test in real-world conditions. In the weeks leading up to the deployment, she doubled her efforts in physical training and dedicated extra hours to studying Dari. Her nights were filled with maps, intelligence reports, and operational manuals. If fear existed, she channeled it into meticulous preparation. It was during this intense period of preparation that Lieutenant James Mercer entered her life. As a special operations officer, Mercer possessed a confidence bordering on arrogance. Tall, with angular features and piercing blue eyes, he commanded instant respect. Rebecca first noticed him during a briefing session about the Kandahar region, where her unit would possibly be stationed. While other officers presented statistical data and generic reports, Mercer spoke of the terrain, the local population, and tribal dynamics with the familiarity of someone who knew every stone in the path. "What will save your lives is not your weapons or armored vehicles," he stated, looking directly at each face in the room. "It's understanding how those people think, what they value, what they fear. You are foreigners there. Never forget that." Something about Mercer's intensity caught Rebecca's attention. He seemed different from the other officers, less concerned with protocols, and more focused on the complex reality that awaited them. After the briefing, she remained in the room, re-examining maps and notes. When Mercer approached, "Specialist Lawson, right?" he asked, reviewing his detailed notes. "I heard you speak, Dari." "I'm learning, sir," Rebecca replied, keeping her gaze fixed on the documents. "I'm learning is what those who barely know how to introduce themselves say," Mercer commented, with a half-smile. "From what I've heard, you could already trade in the Kabul Bazaar without raising suspicion." Rebecca allowed herself a discreet smile. "They exaggerate my abilities, sir. We'll see." He pointed to a series of notes she had made in the margins of a map. "Your observation about traffic patterns on secondary roads is interesting. Most people only pay attention to the main routes. Local people rarely use the main roads when they have alternatives, she commented, especially in areas with a history of irregular checkpoints. Mercer nodded, a glint of approval in his eyes. Exactly. You have good instincts, Lawson. You're going to need them. That brief encounter marked the beginning of a professional relationship that would gradually evolve into something more complex. In the following days, Mercer sought out Rebecca for discussions about local dialects and patrol routes. He valued her perspective, something she had rarely experienced before. For someone accustomed to observing from a distance, being seen, truly seen, was a disconcerting experience. Their closeness did not go unnoticed. Rumors began to circulate through the corridors and quarters of the base. Some suggested favoritism, others insinuated improper involvement. Rebecca ignored the comments, as she always did with irrelevant distraction. Mercer, for his part, seemed immune to any kind of gossip. His reputation as one of the most decorated special operations officers shielded him from trivial questions. It was on a particularly warm June night, 2 weeks before the planned deployment, that Rebecca first faced the consequences of the attention she received from Mercer. She was returning from a study session in the base library when 3 figures emerged from the shadows near the women's quarters. Rebecca immediately recognized Sergeant Kyle Delaney, a man whose imposing physique was matched only by his reputation for intimidation. Beside him were 2 privates whose names she vaguely remembered: Peters and Johnson. "Look who's here!" Delaney dragged out the words, blocking her path. "Lieutenant Mercer's darling." Rebecca maintained a neutral expression. Years of practice in masking emotions served her well at that moment. "Excuse me, Sergeant." Delaney didn't move. "I'm curious, Lawson. What does a bookworm like you have that attracts someone like Mercer's attention so much? It must be something ... special." The insinuation in his voice was impossible to ignore. "I don't know what you're talking about, sir," Rebecca replied, maintaining a formal tone. "Now, if you'll excuse me." When he tried to pass, Delaney grabbed his arm hard enough to leave marks. "I'm not finished talking to you, soldier." "Withdraw your hand, sir," Rebecca said, each word precisely articulated. Her eyes, normally calm, hardened. Delaney laughed, looking at his companions. "Listen, the silent girl does have a voice after all. And it seems she's forgotten her place in the chain of command." "My place in the chain of command doesn't include tolerating harassment." "Sir," Rebecca kept her gaze fixed on Delaney's eyes, refusing to show the fear that was beginning to grow in her chest. The sergeant's expression hardened. With a swift movement, he pushed Rebecca against the wall of the adjacent building. The impact forced the air from her lungs. Before she could recover, Peters and Johnson flanked Delaney, forming a human barrier that isolated her from the view of anyone who might pass. "I am going to teach you a lesson about respect, expert," Delaney hissed, his face inches from hers. "Maybe then you'll understand why certain people should stay in their place." The first blow struck her stomach, precise and calculated to inflict pain without leaving visible marks. Rebecca doubled over, struggling to breathe. The second blow came immediately afterward, striking her ribs. Pain radiated through her body like electricity. A distant part of her mind, the trained part, the soldier, cataloged each movement, each point of contact. Another, more primal part, screamed to counterattack, to fight. But she knew what would happen if she fought back. 3 against 1. A respected sergeant against a specialist known for her quietness. It would be her word against theirs, and the marks of any counterattack would be used against her. So Rebecca did what she always did in the face of adversity. She straightened her posture, absorbed the blow, and waited for the right opportunity. "Nothing to say now, Lawson," Delaney taunted, bracing himself for another blow. That's when a voice cut through the night. "What's going on here?" Lieutenant Rodriguez appeared in the alleyway entrance, his small but imposing figure illuminated by the streetlight. Delaney recoiled immediately, his expression shifting from cruel satisfaction to formal respect in the blink of an eye. "Just a conversation with Specialist Lawson about deployment preparation protocols, ma'am," he replied with rehearsed fluency. Rodriguez glanced from Delaney to Rebecca, whose face was pale, despite her efforts to maintain composure. "Specialist Lawson? Is everything all right?" For a moment, Rebecca considered telling the truth, but the implications unfolded in her mind like a tactical map. her word against that of 3 soldiers. Accusations of lying, possible transfer, or worse, disqualification from the mission in Afghanistan. And there was something else, something she rarely allowed herself to consider. Shame. The shame of not having been able to defend herself, of having been reduced to a helpless victim. "Yes, ma'am," she finally replied, just clarifying a few doubts about the unfolding events. Rodriguez frowned, clearly unconvinced. "Sergeant, your men are dismissed. Specialist Lawson, come with me." As Rebecca followed Rodriguez away from the scene, she felt Delaney's gaze burning into her back. A silent message passed between them. This wasn't over. In Rodriguez's office, away from prying ears, the lieutenant offered Rebecca the chance to report the incident. "I saw enough to know this wasn't just talk. I can start a formal report right now." Rebecca remained silent for a long time, weighing her options. Finally, she spoke. "I appreciate your concern, but I prefer not to file a formal complaint at this. You understand they probably won't stop, right?" Rodriguez pressed. "Men like Delaney interpret silence as permission." "I'm aware, ma'am." Rebecca maintained a steady gaze. "But I'm also aware of the realities of our position. A formal report now, so close to the deployment, would create ... complications." Rodriguez sighed, frustration evident in his expression. "At least let me record a preliminary report. There's no need to proceed now, but if anything else happens, we'll have documentation of a pattern." After a moment of hesitation, Rebecca agreed. Deep down, she knew Rodriguez was right. Men like Delaney rarely stopped after the first attack. But she also knew something she hadn't shared with the lieutenant. She didn't intend to wait for a second attack. The quiet specialist Lawson, the silent observer who blended unnoticed into the crowd, was already formulating a plan. In the days that followed, Rebecca maintained an impeccable routine. Training, meals, study sessions, every movement carefully calculated to appear normal. Beneath the surface, however, she observed, she learned the patterns of Delaney and his companions, where they drank after work, which routes they took back to their quarters, who considered them friends and who avoided them. Rebecca, the eternal observer, now channeled this skill toward a specific purpose. In her rare interactions with Mercer during this period, she noticed that something had changed. He seemed more distant, more formal. The rumors, apparently, had reached him. Rebecca didn't mind. In fact, the distance served her purposes. The last thing she needed was the extra attention that would come if Mercer decided to intervene on her behalf. A week after the incident, Rebecca was ready. She chose a Friday night, when she knew Delaney and his companions would be drinking at the bar outside the base. Using her contacts at Communications Center, she managed to access the duty rosters, confirming that all 3 would be off until Sunday night. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. She wasn't seeking a direct confrontation that would be foolish, given the imbalance of power. Instead, Rebecca relied on the same skills that had made her valuable to the Army: observation, patience, and a detailed knowledge of the rules. Quote, dressed in discreet civilian clothes and with her hair loose, a look so different from her usual military attire that few would recognize her at first glance. Boasts about past exploits. "You should have seen her face," Rebecca heard Delaney say at one point, her voice loud from the amount of alcohol she'd consumed. "Sirs darling," trembling like a recruit on her first day. Johnson and Peters laughed, clearly drunk and emboldened by their leader's arrogance. Rebecca remained motionless, her phone discreetly positioned to capture audio of the conversation. "I bet she won't open her mouth," Peters commented. "Those quiet ones never do. They're too afraid of losing what they've gained in bed. If she knew what was good for her, she'd stay away from Mercer from now on," Delaney added. "Perhaps we should remind her of that before the deployment. I'm sure we can find a better use for that little mouth of hers." The implied threat made Rebecca's stomach churn, but her expression remained neutral. She waited, patient as always, as the night wore on and the 3 men's drunkenness worsened. When Delaney finally decided it was time to leave, Rebecca waited a few minutes before following them at a safe distance. As predicted, the 3 soldiers didn't go straight to their quarters. Instead, they stopped at a gas station to buy more drinks. Rebecca watched as they briefly argued with the attendant, clearly already beyond reasonable intoxication. When they left, staggering toward a parked car, she knew her plan was working better than expected. From her discreet position, Rebecca dialed a number on her phone. Military police. I'd like to report drunk drivers leaving the Shell station on Route 27. 3 men in army uniforms getting into a black Ford Mustang. License plate GHT43. They appear extremely intoxicated and are heading towards the south entrance of the base. She hung up and waited. 15 minutes later, exactly as expected, a military police car intercepted the vehicle less than a kilometer from the base. From her vantage point, Rebecca watched as Delaney was subjected to a breathalyzer test, failed spectacularly, and was taken into custody along with his companion. Any soldier would know that drunk driving was a serious violation of the military code, especially so close to a deployment. For a sergeant like Delaney, with responsibility for other soldiers, the consequences would be even more severe. But Rebecca knew that this, by itself, wouldn't be enough. Delaney had connections in drunkenness infractions, while serious, rarely resulted in more than a formal reprimand for soldiers with a good service record. The second phase of her plan went into action the following morning, using an anonymous email created specifically for this purpose. Rebecca sent the audio files from the previous night to 3 recipients: Lieutenant Rodriguez, the base's internal affairs officer, and most crucially, Delaney's wife. The email was concise and professional, attached as evidence of misconduct and threats made by Sergeant Kyle Delaney and soldiers Peters and Johnson against female personnel. At the base, this is not an isolated accusation. There are witnesses to Sergeant Delaney's violent behavior on the night of June 15th. I suggest a full investigation before these individuals are deployed to a conflict zone where they will have authority over lives. In the days that followed, Rebecca observed with her usual discretion as the chaos unfolded. Delaney was summoned to multiple hearings. His wife, furious both at the sexual threats and the implied infidelity, made a scene in front of the base's administrative building. Peters and Johnson, pressured by investigators, quickly abandoned any loyalty to the sergeant and offered detailed testimonies about the incident with Rebecca and other similar cases involving other women on the base. The investigation expanded when other soldiers, encouraged by the apparent collapse of Delaney's influence, came forward with their own stories of harassment and intimidation. In less than a week, what had begun as a drunk driving case had transformed into a comprehensive investigation into abuse of power, sexual harassment, and systematic misconduct. For Rebecca, watching from a distance, there was a cold satisfaction in seeing events unfold. She did not actively participate in the investigation, did not offer additional testimony. It wasn't necessary. The gears she had set in motion were now working on their own, relentless in their efficiency. Then, 3 days before the planned deployment, came the complication she hadn't anticipated: a formal summons to the office of Colonel Harrison, the base commander. Specialist Lawson. Harrison began as soon as she entered, his expression unreadable. "Please, have a seat." Rebecca obeyed, maintaining the upright posture and neutral expression that had become her trademark. "I imagine you're aware of the situation involving Sergeant Delaney," Harrison continued, studying her intently. "I've heard rumors, sir," Rebecca replied carefully. "Rumors." Harrison repeated the word, a slight smile playing on his lips. Interesting choice of words. He pushed a folder across the table toward him. "Do you know what's inside, expert?" Rebecca didn't touch the folder. "No, sir. Access logs to the communications center, telephone records, security camera footage from the Shell station, and 3 other points between there and the base." Harrison paused significantly. "In short, specialist, we have quite compelling evidence that you deliberately orchestrated the downfall of Sergeant Delaney." Rebecca remained silent, her face an impenetrable mask. "You're not going to deny it?" Harrison asked, raising an eyebrow. "It would be pointless to deny documented facts," she finally. Harrison leaned back in his chair, studying her with fresh eyes. "You know what the problem is, specialist? I can't decide whether to court-martial her or promote her. A brief flash of surprise crossed Rebecca's face before she could suppress it. "Oh yes," Harrison continued, noticing his reaction. "Look, on one hand, you clearly manipulated military resources for a personal vendetta. You violated security protocols, accessed restricted information, and essentially set a trap for a superior officer." He paused, drumming his fingers on the table. "On the other hand, you did all of this without directly violating a single military law. You didn't assault anyone. You didn't falsify documents. You didn't lie in any official testimony. In fact, you carefully avoided giving any testimony. The sergeant really was driving drunk. He really did make those threats. You simply made sure the right people knew about it." Rebecca remained motionless, waiting. "And then there's the fact that, thanks to your small operation, we uncovered a pattern of abusive behavior that affected at least 7 other women on this base." Harrison sighed deeply. "Frankly, Specialist, you've demonstrated exactly the kind of strategic thinking and operational skill that we value in military intelligence." "Sir, may I speak frankly?" Rebecca asked after a moment of silence. "Please, I wasn't seeking revenge. I was seeking justice, and more importantly, prevention." Her eyes met Harrison's without hesitation. Delaney represented a threat not only to me, but to any woman under his command. In a combat zone where the chain of command is absolute and opportunities to report abuse are limited, he would have almost unlimited power. I simply couldn't allow that. Harrison watched her. For a long moment. "Do you know what Lieutenant Mercer said when I asked him about you?" He said, "Lawson is the kind of soldier you want by your side when everything goes wrong. She sees 10 steps ahead and never, ever gives up." He paused meaningfully. "It seems he was right." "What happens now, sir?" Rebecca asked, her voice calm despite the tension she felt. "That partly depends on you, Specialist." Harrison closed the folder. "Technically, I have sufficient grounds for a court-martial. Misuse of military resources, conduct detrimental to good order and discipline, ... The list goes on. But I also have reason to believe would be a valuable asset in intelligence operations." He leaned forward, his eyes fixed on hers. "So here's what I'm going to propose. An immediate transfer to the intelligence unit under the direct command of Lieutenant Mercer. You'll still go to Afghanistan, but in a different role than originally planned. In exchange, this briefcase," he tapped lightly on the table, "never existed." Rebecca considered the offer, weighing its implications and consequences. Finally, she asked, "And Delaney, sir?" "Sergeant Delaney will face a court-martial, not for his ... arrangement, but for his own action. The evidence against him is overwhelming. Thanks to the multiple witnesses who have come forward, he will likely be demoted and transferred at the very least. He may face time in confinement, depending on the results of the full investigation." Rebecca nodded slowly. "In that case, I accept your offer, sir." "Excellent." Harrison stood up, indicating that the meeting was over. "Report to Lieutenant Mercer tomorrow at 600. He will provide you with the details of your new assignment." As Rebecca reached the door, he added, "And Specialist? Next time you feel you need to take drastic measures, come talk to me first." "Yes, sir," she replied, allowing herself a small smile. As she left the administrative building, Rebecca felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time, a renewed sense of purpose. It wasn't just about revenge against Delaney, she realized. It was about finding her true place, using her natural abilities, observation, patience, strategic thinking to protect others. Perhaps this was why she had always felt different, why she had always observed from afar while others lived in the moment. On the horizon, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the military complex. In 3 days, she would be on a plane to Afghanistan, beginning an entirely new chapter. And for the first time in a long time, Rebecca Lawson wasn't just watching life unfold. She was actively shaping its course. As she walked toward the barracks, her steps were light, despite the heavy consequences of the past few days. The silent soldier had found her voice, not through words, but through action, and the world was finally beginning to hear her. The following morning, promptly at 6 a.m., Rebecca showed up at Mercer's office, her uniform impeccable as always, but there was something different about her bearing. A subtle confidence, a more visible determination. When Mercer looked at her, there was a new respect in his eyes. Specialist Lawson, he greeted her, indicating the chair in front of him. Or perhaps I should say, Sergeant Lawson. Rebecca blinked, momentarily surprised. Sir? Your promotion was processed this morning, Mercer explained, pushing a stack of currency coins across the table. Congratulations, thank you, sir, she replied, carefully and reverently taking the insignia. It was not the outcome she had anticipated. Don't thank me yet, Mercer warned, his tone becoming more serious. The work ahead of us is demanding and often morally ambiguous. Intelligence is not for the faint of heart or those with a simplistic view of the world. Rebecca met his gaze without hesitation. I understand, sir. I believe you understand, Mercer agreed, a slight smile playing on his lips. Colonel Harrison told me about your creative solution to the Delaney problem. I must say, I'm impressed. Few would have the courage or the ability to execute something like that. I did what needed to be done, sir. That's precisely why you're here now. Mercer opened a folder in front of him. Our mission in Afghanistan won't be what you were expecting. We won't be at the main base in Kandahar. Instead, we'll be working with a small forward team, establishing contact with local leaders and gathering intelligence on insurgent movement. He pushed a map toward her, pointing to a mountainous region near the Pakistani border. It's hostile territory. We'll need someone who can communicate effectively with the local population, someone with sharp instincts and the ability to read situations quickly. His eyes met hers. Someone like you. Rebecca studied the map, absorbing every. When do we? In 48 hours. There's a lot to prepare. Mercer stood, indicating that the formal meeting was over. One last thing, Sergeant. What you did with Delaney ... was ingenious and effective, but in the field, the consequences of our actions aren't always so predictable or controllable. Remember that. Yes, sir, Rebecca replied, understanding the implied warning. As she left the office, she touched the new rank insignia in her pocket. Sergeant Lawson. A new rank, a new mission, a new beginning. The road ahead would be difficult, perhaps even more dangerous. Something she had never imagined. But for the first time, Rebecca felt she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The silent soldier had found her voice, and the world would be forced to listen to